podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are The Podcast. It's Gav and you're joined for another podcast this week. We are not sick of talking about Sunderland's win at Wembley and we're not going anywhere. So, we thought we'd just grab a couple of fellas for a chat and see where it goes. First up, we haven't had him on since we won at Wembley. So this is the first time that Pod Hawley's on the pod. Mr. Johnny Hawley. Hello, mate.
Hiya, Gav. How you doing, mate?
Yes, good. Better than you by the sounds of it. Your voice still sounds a bit knackered there.
Yeah, voice, body, brain, everything still absolutely in the mud, but worth every second. Wouldn't change it for the world, mate.
Like I said, it's the first time you've been on since Wembley. So, just quickly grab your thoughts out. Have you come back down to earth yet? Are you still on cloud nine? Has it sunk in?
I'm not as on cloud nine as I was before I had to go back to work. That was the first bit that I thought, oh God, real life's back and we have to think about it all again. But no, I can't stop watching the clips. I kind of stopped reading all the posts and listening to the goals, the commentary, just everything. I'm still just soaking it all in. I think everyone just reflecting on probably the best 2 weeks that most of us have ever had supporting this football club, and probably the best 2 weeks a lot of us will have for the foreseeable future, because I just don't see how it can get any better than that.
Yeah. Also here today, we've got a man who played 163 games for Sunderland, scoring 3 goals, and is the voice of SAFC alongside Frankie Francis. It's Danny Collins. Welcome.
Good morning, lads. How are we doing?
Very, very good. How are you then? Have you recovered from Wembley yet, Danny?
My voice is slightly better than Johnny's, I think. Yeah. Sunday morning, I was a write-off. I couldn't speak. Nothing was coming out, but gradually, the last few days, it's come back. So, but as you said there, what a fantastic experience over the last, 15 days or so, semi-finals, and obviously onto the final on Saturday. Looking at the first 10 minutes or so, I didn't think it was going to plan, as most Sunderland fans would agree, but the lads rallied, pulled themselves round and got over the line. So, yeah, fantastic results, and what an occasion.
Where does that rank for you in terms of experiences as not just a player but an ex-player, because you won promotion twice as a Sunderland player, so you've been there and done it. But I was there as well as a fan when you won promotion, and that has to be that on Saturday has to be right up there amongst it for you, I presume.
Yeah, exactly. I said after the game, actually, when we were doing the debrief pitchside, that obviously I was part of the side that got promoted twice, but automatically in terms of winning the league. But for those lads at the weekend, because you're going into that, it's 50-50, isn't it? And big expectation, massive following from the Sunderland fans. And to get over the line to experience it, you could just see by the lads' reactions at the full-time whistle and what it meant, obviously, to the fans in there as well. So that's the proper way to go, really, isn't it? Through the playoffs, I think everyone would agree. Look at the second time for ourselves. It was obviously down at Kenilworth Road. Listen, I think was it 5-0? I think we beat Luton on that
5-0. Yeah, we were just talking about this before you came on, because Johnny thought it was 5-1, but I was like, I know it was 5-0 because I was one of the ones there. I was one of the
Johnny,
the lucky,
come on.
Yeah, one of the lucky fans who managed to get invited to that game. You needed a letter. Yeah, it was one of them ones. There was only about 700 tickets.
Yeah, and obviously we didn't have the trophy down there. Was it Birmingham? I think we're playing Derby, and I think Birmingham are obviously favourites. They drew their match, and I think it'd be St Andrews if I recall, and obviously we didn't get the trophy down there, but fantastic scenes and a good journey back after that. But no, at the weekend that was something special.
I guess as a fan, Johnny, you're a little bit younger than me, right? But we were talking about this on the way out of Wembley on Saturday. I can't imagine there'll be another moment in my life like that. We would have to win an FA Cup or a League Cup, and given it's been 50 odd years since we last did that, that's about as good as it gets, isn't it? Winning the league's great, finishing second's great, but doing it like we did, not just winning the playoffs, but, last minute winners and the scenes which we saw not only in the semis, but in the final, and then to get to lift a trophy and for the players to be able to celebrate in front of 30 odd thousand Sunderland fans. Does it get any better than that?
In terms of moments, I think you're really, really struggling, aren't you? Like you say, if we win a trophy or something, like a major trophy one day, then, I can't say that won't feel better because I've got no idea how it feels. But it's not just a 95th minute winner or the lifting the trophy at Wembley and stuff. It's everything, isn't it? You know, like you say, the whole playoff run. I mean, that's got to be one of the most iconic playoff runs of all time by any team.
I can't think of it. I can't think of another like it. I mean, I know I'm a Sunderland fan, but nothing that comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're biased, so maybe we can't say it's definitely number one. But you know, last minute winner in the first leg, last second goal to win on aggregate in the second leg, last minute goal near enough in the final. The age of the squad, the Tommy Watson story scoring the winner, and then everything over the past 8 years. I mean, I think you put out, you know, the post yesterday on the Roker Report feeds, Gav, kind of summarising all the ridiculous moments that have happened over the last 8 years and the 2 relegations and everything else.
You know the best part of that, by the way, Johnny, the best part of that is I've after reading it back a few times, I've came up with like another 10 that I missed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like trying to summarise is just ridiculous. So for all of that to have come together and that the release of that pressure over the last 8 years at that final whistle on Saturday, I think that specific moment with everything that went into it, I think there's a lot of fan bases, the vast majority of fan bases in this country, if not this continent, would struggle to ever replicate a moment like that. So just feeling incredibly lucky and grateful to have been there to watch it.
What was it like being...
I think sometimes... Go on, Gav.
No, go ahead, Danny.
No, I was going to say sometimes you just think the footballing gods are looking down on you, aren't they? And it's written, you go for, as you say, semi-final, Dan Ballard scoring the last-minute winner, and you're thinking you're not going to see scenes like those again. Then obviously going down to Wembley, first minute, Pato's pulling out, you know, Gordon Banks save there from behind his line. Luke gets injured, you're thinking, oh no, where we go? And then setting off, you know, Pato makes the save with his feet, Dan Ballard for the follow-up with the block as well, and then the lads to turn it around. And for Tommy, who's obviously had a bit of grief since his commitment in joining Brighton. You know, I know Tommy quite well as a lad, and he will have taken that to heart because he's quite a quiet lad, quite a quiet character. But for him to come on and to step up and casually just side put that one into the bottom corner, and you know, as you say, sometimes it's just how it's meant to be, isn't it?
Yeah, that just on that goal, I said this on a pod the other day, and I just wonder what you think, Danny, is that the type of quality that gets you removed to a Brighton at 19, 18-year-old. You know, that moment, 95th minute of a high-pressure game at Wembley with 3 decent passing options on. You look around him, there's lads around him who he can give the ball to. And in that moment, he found a moment of quality. And sometimes, you know, when you talk to Sunderland fans and they're like, well, we haven't seen enough of him. Is he good enough? Is he ready for Brighton? Is that the sort of thing that scouts are looking at when they're trying to find the next big thing? That at 18-year-old, they've got the bravery and the gumption to just take an opportunity on like that and then execute as well. Because we've talked about it before, you know, that you think about that Lincoln game when Max Power skied one from 40 yards. And in that moment in his head, he could probably visualise, I'm going to hit the back of the net here and send Sunderland through. And it just didn't work, you know. But someone like Watson, to be able to do that, is that why a club like Brighton might be looking at him and have obviously went and signed him?
Yeah, I think first of all, obviously Brighton will have scouted Tommy for, you know, over the last couple of years, and he's been doing well in 21s, hasn't he, as well? It's not just over the spur of one incident in a game, really. And if you look at Tommy, I think prior to his injury, he was coming into it. Obviously, Sheffield United away, he had a really good game. Then he won the penalty, had a good impact on the game. And then since he come back from his injury, and obviously, as we say, the move to Brighton happened, he perhaps wasn't quite at it. I think you go Bristol City away, he was way off it, wasn't he, that day? He just couldn't do anything right. And then you're thinking, well, there's his opportunity there because Romain's picked up his injury for him to then sort of nail down a starting place in the playoff final, and obviously Romain come back in, but for him to come off the bench. And, you know, credit to Keith Moore, obviously, with a heavy touch. He's the one that gets us on the attack, really, because I think Patrick had run into a couple of bodies down the right, hadn't he? And then it's there for Sheffield United then to go on the counter. Keith Moore perhaps could have took it on the half turn and drove at us. But as I say, then it goes into Tommy, a couple of touches from Tommy, and then he almost uses, I think it's Vinny Souza as a mannequin, really, as a shield, and just passes it round him. Because from where we were sat in the sort of media boxes there, where it looked side on, it didn't look like it was going to reach the goal, like there was enough pace to trouble the keeper. But I think when you see it back, there's one angle, isn't there, in slow motion when it's almost past the post and it just sort of curls inside the post, brushes the side netting, and as you say, that's that. So made up for Tommy. And yeah, you know, there's a quality player in there. He's a young lad at the end of the day. You know, you've got experienced boys who go out and they have off days as well. So Tommy's only going to grow from that, and it's been a big learning experience for him. So listen, we wish him well. And I don't think any Sunderland fan is going to have a harsh word to say against Tommy Watson now moving forward.
Yeah, it's some story, Johnny, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. And look, I'll be honest, I'll hold my hands up. I think it was the Oxford United away reaction pod I was on. And I was, I didn't lay into him or anything, but I was giving him a little bit of stick then as well. Because I just, at the time I thought it seemed like a non-committal kind of, performance lacking in all the basics and all that. But like you say, I mean, you made a good point there, Danny. There's experienced players who have proven the quality over years who go out and have bad games. It does happen. So, I'm happy to hold my hands up here and say, I definitely got him wrong in the last few weeks of the season. Tommy Watson, he's fully proven me wrong. I'm eating my words and they taste magnificent. If this is what eating your words is like, I'll do it more often. But no, it's like you've both said, that story that he's had, the stick he's got, his age, the move to Brighton, the fact it's basically the last kick of a ball. I mean, I don't know if he touched it again after the goal, so maybe
I don't think he did. No.
His last kick of the ball in the Sunderland shirt's taking us to Wembley. That is genuinely like the stuff of dreams, isn't it? That's what he'll have been. I mean, he maybe couldn't have even imagined it in his wildest dreams as a kid, growing up to do that for Sunderland. So to see him do it, I was genuinely really, really pleased for him. I mean, there was nearly every lad in the squad you'd have been chuffed for if they'd scored the winner. There was stories left, right and centre, like we were saying sort of in our group beforehand. You think of Dan Neil and that picture of him at Wembley as a kid in 2014. You think of Luke O'Nien, if it had been him, the journey he's been on. You think of, if it had been somebody like Trey Hume or Sirkin, part of the core of League One lads who've now risen with us up 2 divisions. There was stuff like that all over the pitch, the potential for those kind of moments. But it took somebody grabbing it by the scruff of the neck and doing something to make it happen. And so massive credit to Tommy Watson. The composure as well, the side-footed. Like you said, Gav, about Max Power's 40-yard effort against Lincoln. That's what most players would do. They'd think, right, last minute, could be my last chance. If I'm going to have a shot, I'm going to have a bloody shot here. I'm going to get my foot through it and there's, give the keeper no chance. So for Watson to have the presence of mind to try that and bend it in the corner. I mean, the slow motion replays, that's how fast it felt to me in real time watching it in Wembley. I thought it was never going to reach the net. So yeah, for all that to come together again, that story, him even getting on the pitch, trying that and pulling it off it's just magnificent, isn't it? And yeah, I'll never ever get sick of watching that goal.
Can you believe, Danny, how long it's been? You just mentioned Max Power against Lincoln. It feels like bloody years ago, doesn't it? It wasn't that long ago, though, really. It was, 4 years ago, something like that, like 5 years ago, I'm not sure. But, I mean, the rate of improvement of this football club in that period of time is ridiculous, isn't it? When you see the quality of the player we've got, the youngsters in the squad, from struggling to get out of League One like we did for years. I mean, I don't know about you, but I watched the Charlton final against Leyton Orient and the standard was appalling. And I'm like, we really, really struggled to get out of that division for a long time. Can you believe it's where we are now over such a short period?
Yeah, well, obviously, had a few managers had a go at it, then you're trying to get us out of there. It was 4 seasons in there. And then obviously Tony coming in, almost getting us over the line, wasn't it, against Luton? And you're thinking, is it meant to be, really? So it's been a long 8 years, hasn't it, for a club like Sunderland? And, perhaps fans on the outside think, is there a bit of arrogance with Sunderland fans? But I think when you're on the inside and you see the size of the club, really, the training ground, the stadium, the fan base itself, it's a massive club. And you could see that over the course of the weekend down at Wembley from Friday morning onwards, really, heading down on the train. But it was a tough period. There's other clubs that have been there, the likes of Leeds and Blackburn, so other sides who've been down there and are trying to get their way back. So it's tough. And then once you get into that championship as well, it gets tougher every season. You look at next season now with those 3 sides coming back down. You've obviously got Birmingham coming up with a few quid behind them. Same with Wrexham. You'd expect Norwich, the usual suspects, Middlesbrough, West Brom, all these types of sides to be in and around it as well. So it's a tough league to get out of. So we've managed to do that now. And then obviously looking forward, the hard work starts, doesn't it? Recruitment off the pitch, and it's tough, but hopefully we can get there. And I'd certainly snap your hand off at taking 17th right now.
Yeah, well, we'll get on to that in a bit, I think. But just on the other goal, Mayenda, I think he was the I wouldn't say the story of the weekend, but like Johnny in London, it was everywhere you went, you just heard that bloody song, didn't you? Like Liza Mayenda has become a real cult hero, hasn't he? At Sunderland, Johnny, he's gone from you've got again. We talk about the journey. He has a lad who couldn't get a game for Hibs, who came over from Sochaux in the French second tier, which is a massive step up even to the Championship. Came over here, didn't particularly know the language very well. A young boy, a teenager who'd probably never really been away from his family. That even from like November, December time when he was missing those chances, the chances against Stoke, if you remember, that they were the high profile ones. To then see this kid who I think definitively as a Premier League footballer in waiting has everything. He has all the tools. If he can stay injury free and he can get a consistent run of football playing for Sunderland, he'll be a Premier League footballer, no doubt. I mean, can you believe that? Would you, even 6 months ago, if someone had said Elijah Mayenda is going to be the star man coming away from Wembley and this whole run towards the end of the season, would you have believed a word of that?
No, simply put, I absolutely wouldn't. I mean, I was probably one of the fans who rated him the most the first season he came. And all I thought was, he looks like he had a few decent touches in that cameo against Birmingham at home or whoever it was 2 seasons ago. So like you say, for him to go to Hibs, barely get a kick. And even the way he started the season, obviously he was great. He got that brace against Sheffield Wednesday and should have had a goal against, was it Portsmouth or someone, when Alan Brown just tapped it in on the line and slightly took it off him. Even from that, that was a great start, but he didn't look like he was putting anywhere near the level of form or the level of confidence together that he's shown in these last few weeks of the season. And you're right. I mean, around the turn of the year, around Christmas, I think he sort of had a massive chance at Blackburn away, I remember, on Boxing Day, where he kind of ran half the length of the pitch near enough on his own and then didn't even really get a shot off. And you're just thinking, like, that bit of composure, just, take the touch round him or whatever. It just wasn't quite there, was it? He had all the raw ingredients. He had the pace. He had a bit of power. We'd seen he could finish because he'd scored goals, but he just didn't quite look like he was ready to get all that, working in tandem and making him into more of a threatening package. But then the last sort of month or two of the season, I feel like he just was building up more and more of a head of steam with every week that passed. So if you'd asked us sort of maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, could I believe it going at the end of the season, it would have been a bit easier. But from the player he was even 6 to 12 months ago to what he is now, it's incredible. And, I remember the development in Job from the end of last season to the very start of this season. You thought he was just a different animal over the summer. Mayenda's put that together mid-season, at 19 years of age, turning 20 right at the end. It's just incredibly impressive. And you're right, like that song every 5 minutes in London. And there was a lot of builders had a speaker outside my window all day yesterday. And at one point, Sam Fender come on. I was like, I'm going to go out and have to fight them here. Like, where's Eli when you need him to come and put them right? But and obviously the iconic celebrations, both after the second leg of the semis and then on Saturday with the sunglasses on, the way he just so calm, isn't he? And so cool when he scores and the celebration in front of the crowd. Like, he's got every single aspect of a cult hero. And
yeah,
I can't wait to see him develop more for Sunderland. Hopefully it's for many years to come.
Yeah, he's a special talent, Danny, isn't he? He's got all the tools, I think.
Yeah, no, I think he has. I think, there's obviously a rawness about him, but he's 19 years of age. But you ask a centre-back in the Championship if they'd looked forward to playing against him last season, they certainly wouldn't have. I think you look at, obviously, Sheffield United, the home game where, Jack Robinson and Hodzic, tough time against, obviously, Isidore as well, there, up there alongside him. So there was a fear in defenders, I think. But even in games when he has quiet spells, the weekend, couldn't really get into the game. In the first half, he had that half chance with a header. And then out and up in second half, we moved the ball quicker. And his movement off the shoulder in there. And Jack Robinson probably thinks, I've got him in a good position here. He's on his right foot, but great first touch, by the way, but the outside of his left boot to allow it to run him across himself. And then a lovely finish as well. But yeah, he's just been grown as the seasons wore on, hasn't he? And out of the two of them, really, he became the number one striker, because you go back, as you say, 2 or 3 months, Johnny, where you probably would have gone, Isidore would have been shading it and starting in the playoff final, whereas he's earned that right to get that starting shirt at the top end of the pitch. So, yeah, fantastic talent, as you say, pace, power, because he looks quite wiry, doesn't he? Well, but he's stronger than I think people would give him credit for as well. And I think that's all just as, for me, what he needs to work on a little bit. But again, he's 19. He's back to goal, really, that hold-up play at times. But that's come throughout the course of the season where it has been getting better. Now, we'll see him develop, I'm sure, over the next couple of years, and hopefully in a Sunderland shirt.
Yeah, who does he? Thinking back to your own time as a player, what kind of? Is there any strikers he reminds you of that you played against?
Oh,
Because I can't think of many strikers who do what he does. We just picks the ball up and turns and runs. There's
runs and that really. Yeah, not so much. I mean, left foot wise, probably Darryl Murphy. But Darryl was good with back to goal. Really had a decent strike on him as well, but perhaps obviously not as quick as Mayenda on the over sort of 5 or 10 yards really. So no, I can't think off the top of my head who I would compare him to from my sort of playing days. Really, no, not like a David Conley or Stevie Ella. They're different sort of box in the box type of strikers, really, aren't they? Where I think Mayenda, he's got the sort of full package, really, and he will show that over the next 2 years.
How would you have dealt with him as a defender then? The way that he just turns and runs, because there's not many centre halves are going to be able to keep up with him when he's running at them.
No, so in terms of that, because naturally as a centre back, you don't want to get dragged in. If you want to drop deep over the halfway line, you don't want to go in there, do you? Because you're worried about what's happening behind you. But at the same time, you don't want him receiving the ball, excuse me, and then getting 10, 15 yards to drive at you as well, because he's confident. He'll back himself to knock it past you and run as well. So me personally, if you're playing a 4-3-3, I'll be having a quiet word with you sitting centre midfielder and saying, you make sure you're screening there. Don't be wandering too far. Just keep an eye on him. Stop the ball going into his feet. And then obviously I've just got to worry about that ball over the top and having a quiet word with my goalkeeper as well to be on his toes.
But it's interesting you say that as well, Danny, because I think you're right. The way to defend against him is so difficult because he is quite a unique profile of striker. Because to me, he almost looks like a winger with a striker's build playing up front, doesn't he? Yeah. It's the way that he does get it on not even the half turn sometimes, he just spins, doesn't he? And he's able to go. It must be a nightmare particularly as a centre-back to defend against, because I used to play centre-back in Sunderland League at a terrible level, nowhere near where you got to. I wasn't playing for Sunderland in the Premier League, but it used to be one of the things I used to even hate at that crap level, like defending against somebody who's not afraid to run at you, because it forces you into a decision, doesn't it? You've got to either go in and put the foot in and then you look silly if he's past you. Yeah. Or you drop and you never make the call and then he gets the shot off and you look silly. So it must be a nightmare, mustn't it?
Yes, the balance. Yeah. I think for young lads, when I've played against them really, it's when they're learning that sort of hold up play when they're trying to pin you, it's keeping a yard or so distance so that they're not going to look, they're trying to feel for you. And if you're not there, then obviously they're looking over their shoulder, which takes their mind off the ball coming into their feet. So that's where it's a bit of cat and mouse really. You want to just keep the distance where they can't feel you and try and pin you. And then you're ready on the front foot to try and nick it. But then at the same time, you don't, as I said there, you don't want to allow them to drop 5, 10 yards off you, because then they receive it. Then they're squaring you up one-on-one. And as I said with Elijah there, he'll back himself one-on-one. You see it time and time again. And the prime example would be the goal at Bristol City, where he receives it probably 25 yards from our goal, doesn't he? Yeah, a couple of their lads coming together and end up almost slide tackling each other. But then the fear then from the 2 or 3 Bristol City defenders in their own half end up backing off all the way to the edge of their own box. They don't want to commit because they don't want to look silly diving in because he'll knock it past them. So, and that's what he's going to do to defenders now. But obviously moving forward, going into the Premier League, coming up against higher calibre centre-backs and full-backs as well. So it's going to be a good test for him.
Yeah, I'm just racking my brains to think of strikers who he reminds us of, and this is probably a wild suggestion, but Drogba used to do that quite well at Chelsea, obviously one of the greatest to ever do it, but Drogba was that type of striker where he could just turn people and pin them and run with the ball. There's not many that, honestly, I mean, you were racking your brains. I genuinely, I think he's very, very unique, and I think you made a good point there, Johnny, about him being almost like a winger who can play centrally and run. You just don't see it anymore. I think it was Chris actually a few weeks ago compared him to Marco, or maybe Martin. Marco used to do that apparently. Just pick the ball up and run at people, and they almost were like, "What the hell's going on here?" That's sort of the situation with Elijah. But I mean, for me, what he's added to his game, which wasn't there previously, is that composure in front of goal. Again, I mentioned about Tommy Watson having the gumption to do what he did in the final minute. Mayenda at the same time, that's late in the game too. We're getting beat 1-0. We haven't had many opportunities in the game. And that first touch, as you said, Danny, was unbelievable. I mean, it was the first thing when I watched it back on the screen from my seat at Wembley, the first thing I noticed was that touch with his left foot to set it up. It was absolutely glorious. He's another one. I don't want to go too much into the summer right now because I think we're still sort of reveling in what happened at Wembley, but he's another one where I'm looking at him thinking, buddy, if we're not careful, there's going to be teams looking at him and thinking there's not many lads out there who can do what he can do.
Yeah, well, exactly that, isn't it? You look through the squad, really youngest squad in the league, and then of course there are. You've been promoted now, so there'll be thousands of scouts there at the weekend, no doubt, and they'll all be having a look. Obviously, there's chat with Joe, but what's going on for the Riggy, Dan Neil. You go through the squad really, Dan Ballard, and that's a credit to the club, isn't it? As you say there, if you've got scouts who are looking at your players who are sort of seasoned centre teams in the Premier League, really, and there'll be one or two coming in with offers, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. But from our point of view, we want to try and hold on to the young talent and build a squad around these lads. And Mayenda, as you said, their 19-year-old, his first real full season at Championship level. So now we want him to take the step up with ourselves and try and build around him. Yes, maybe you're looking to add a seasoned centre forward from the Premier League who's got some experience to help him along the way as well. And obviously Elijah then to compete with him for a starting place, depending obviously what formation we're looking to play on a Saturday afternoon in the Premier League.
Another thing I just want to pick your brains on is, that substitution of 09 very early in the game.
Yeah.
As a central defender, Chris Mepham has probably known since the day before, or maybe even earlier, that he wasn't going to be starting this game. And then all of a sudden it's like, right, Chris, you're on a minute into the game or whatever it is. Put yourself in his shoes. What are you doing to adjust in that moment?
Yeah, I actually spoke to Chris post-match after and saying obviously he would have been disappointed even to the semi-final really, where he lost his place, didn't he, for Dan to come in. And, you look at it back now and it's obviously a great call with Dan having two fantastic games in the semi-final and scoring the winner. But, listen, Chris is perhaps the most experienced in terms of he's got Premier League experience behind him, hasn't he? Numerous caps for Wales as well to try and put it behind him. And you have to, as a professional, yes, you're disappointed. We've all been there. You get the shout from the manager, I'm going to go with so-and-so today because I feel this. You don't want to accept it, but you have to accept it. You have to train properly, be professional, and you have to wait. And if the opportunity comes along, you have to try and take it. And that's exactly what's happened at the weekend. With Chris, because he probably hasn't done the same warm-up as the other lads. Generally, you see the subs, don't you, where the other lads are going through their paces. With Scotty on the touchline there, a few runs, whereas the subs might have a little bit of a relaxed one, striking a few balls around. And then all of a sudden, it's a big game as well. And within 2 minutes, he's getting stripped off and he's ready to come on. But listen, I thought he'd come on and he handled the occasion well. And going up against Keita Moore, he knows obviously Keita well from his playing with him for Wales. So they know each other fairly well. And I thought over the course of I was going to say 88 minutes, but there was about 15 minutes of stoppage time over the course of the game. So he stood up and he handled it well.
Do you know that mental adjustment though, that, if you're playing a couple of days before a big game like that, everything's running through your head, all the scenarios in the game, like nerves are probably setting in, the night before you may be a little bit nervous because you're playing the next day. Do you think that probably helped him, that he didn't know that this was coming?
Yeah, I always like there's a player. Sometimes you get managers who don't like to name the side until you get to the change rooms, say to the 3 o'clock at 1:30, and then they flip the chart over. Here's the starting lineup today. And then if you think you're playing and you're not, then you're disappointed. And that's in your system then when you're going out for the wall. But whereas when managers tend to name the team on a Thursday or a Friday, you've got your head around it. And as you say there, Chris has probably gone into it, think, oh, well, I'm not playing. And as a centre-back, you're highly unlikely to get on unless there's an injury, maybe a sending off, or to come on late on to shore the game up, as often we see Leo Hjelde doing, don't we? But for Chris, as I say there, professionalism within him. He's a good sort of seasoned pro now. Is he 26? I think Chris is, so he's at a good age.
It's basically a pensioner in this team, that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. But as disappointing as it was for Luke, and we've seen Luke's reaction after the game, he's obviously made up for the lads in the club because he's been here a while. But it was good for Chris as well to come back in and to be a part of it after what would have been a disappointment for him because he's chalked off, 35, 40 games this season for us, hasn't he? Yeah. And over the course of those games, he's maybe had 1 or 2 games where he's been below his standards, but over the course of the season, I think he's been a regular, decent performer for us.
What did you think, Johnny, when 09 went down? Were you kind of thinking, oh God, it's just not our day, even though it's that early in the game? Because you had that chance where Pat was had to make the brilliant save. Then 09, your biggest leader on the pitch gets injured, and I'll be honest, for me, I started that after 2-3 minutes, I was thinking, oh bloody hell, here we go. It started already.
Yeah, well, immediately, my first reaction was just, oh, what the hell's happened there? Because I was so busy focusing on the header and the save.
You couldn't really tell what had happened, could you?
No, but then the first thing you notice is the way 09 was on the floor, like he just dropped and stopped. And you're like, if he's down like that, it's something serious. Like he's definitely not carrying on in this game. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, he's down getting treatment for ages. You see the stretcher come on and you think, like, bloody hell, how bad is this? Like, but overriding emotion was just sad. Like I was gutted for 09 because, I mean, absolutely love 09 to bits. He's without a doubt my favourite footballer of all time. No offence, Danny. But like, you know, again,
Danny's just left the chat.
But like, you know, I thought of all the players on the pitch, I thought he would have deserved to see the game out if we were going to win the most. So I was gutted for him from that point of view. But then, yeah, you know, I was having a similar reaction to you, Gav. I was thinking, like, you know, is this a sign that it's not going our way already? You know, a minute or two in, we've already needed a wonder save, and one of our biggest leaders is going off. And then Mepham comes on, and I was thinking, again, similar to what you were saying, you know, it's a tough one to adapt immediately coming into a game like that, and especially against Kiefer Moore up front. I mean, I know that he knows him from international duty, but he gave us a torrid time all day until he turned provider in the end. Like, but you know, it felt like after Ballard being such a colossus against Coventry over the two legs, it felt quite strange seeing an opposition striker with that many headers against us. So it's, you know, all the ingredients were there from a negative point of view to make that a real baptism of fire into the game for Mepham. And, you know, I thought he had, you know, maybe a couple of slightly shaky moments early on as he was just finding his feet in the game, but that's to be expected. And I thought it was massive credit to him and probably to the dressing room, I imagine, that he was able to come on with such a good mindset, not to be too disappointed or to put the disappointment behind him of not being involved from the start, and to come in and put the performance in that he did. I mean, you know, I'm sure you, Danny, are more familiar with it than we will be, you know, what the players kind of like with each other in the dressing room and that togetherness, that atmosphere. I mean, it looks from the outside looking in like it's a brilliant place to be playing your football at the minute, Sunderland. You know, they all seem like they would kind of run through brick walls for each other. But I mean, I don't know whether you can speak on sort of how much of a difference that does actually make for the players in exactly these kind of situations.
Yeah, I think you always find out in the tough times really what the squad's like. You know, if you get a little bit of a divide or a few cliques here and there, stuff. And obviously over the years I've been there. I had it at Sunderland with one or two, but in general, when you're pulling together and you're going in the right direction, and you can feel that as a club at this moment in time. And I think where you look from where we were start of the season, where we won, say, 4 on the bounce, didn't we? And then we finished losing, was it 5 on the bounce there? And you're thinking, the wheels are coming off here. But for the lads, and I think that showed over the semi-final and the final, really, where maybe even in those games, we weren't quite at our best, but that togetherness showed through in the end, didn't it? And certainly in extra time against Coventry, where we got back on track and the lads found their legs again. And then certainly setting off at the weekend where we come out to play with a little bit more tempo. The first goal sums it up for me, where we move the ball quicker. When we're at our best is when we're taking 1 or 2 touches and moving the ball quicker, and the movement's excellent. And that showed really. But yeah, you can just see the togetherness. Obviously, all the social media, it's massive these days, isn't it? And you can see around the training ground with the videos how much the lads enjoy being in each other's company as well.
What were your thoughts on the way the game developed from that point, from a tactical perspective then? Because for me, I thought Chris Wilder gave us too much of an opportunity to get back in the game by going more defensive in terms of taking off another forward, bringing a midfielder on. They changed a couple of players around, and you were almost thinking, is he trying to see the game out here? And our response was to go attacking. You know, we went with 2 up front. We brought Tommy Watson on. We put Patrick Roberts on the right-hand side. And that was us saying, we're going to go out. You know, we've got nothing to lose. This is the last game of the season. We've got absolutely nothing to lose. And I said, coming away from the ground, Le Bris won us that game with his tactics, I thought, and his changes. I think obviously the players have then got to do the business in the moment and find the quality. But I just thought it sent such a strong message to everybody, not just us, but the Sheffield United players and their manager, that we weren't prepared to just lie down and see the game out, maybe like Leyton Orient did the next day. You know, we actually went for it a bit.
Yeah, I think they were sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know, if that second one counts, obviously, thanks to VAR as well, that's bailed us out. If that second goal goes in, you're probably like myself thinking, well, that's pretty much game over. It's a long way back from here. But that gave us a lifeline. And then obviously you're getting it at half time. See, first half, I think for the first 20, 25 minutes, they were the better team, played to their strengths, got the ball forward to keep them all, got bodies around him. Gus Hamer was excellent getting on the ball as well. And then we had a lot of possession, but moved it too slow. We struggled to get Enzo into the game. He was having to drop deep to try and get a touch of the ball. Couldn't get Romain into the game. You know, Mayenda was quiet. So we had a lot of possession in the first half, but didn't get anywhere with it. Setting off and make up the intensity straight away. You could see us pressing them a little bit higher. And then I think from their point of view, they thought, well, we're 1-0 up. Do we now try and go and get that second goal, or do we just try and manage the game? So it's a little bit of cat and mouse. And as you say then, from our point of view, Gav, Régis looks at it and thinks, well, We've got Isidore on the bench, Patrick Roberts is on the bench, Tommy Watson. So changes top end of the pitch to try and go and get us back into the game. And obviously, once it happens, then it becomes a Regis masterclass, doesn't it? So he gets all the plaudits, of course. And then Chris Wilder, he's chopping and changing. He's made 5-6 changes. Brereton Diaz comes on, gets half by Trey Hume. He's then back off the pitch. And then Armour Hodzic is going down.
Just to cut into you there, by the way, what about that tackle? You must have loved that.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, proper old school, wasn't it? And you just see it happen where Brereton Diaz receives it as a bit of a heavy touch, overruns it, doesn't he? And then it's Trey's licking his lips there, isn't he, on the touchline? And obviously we spoke to him after the game and I said, you must have enjoyed that one. What did he come out with? Well, I was knackered by then. I couldn't be off chasing him back or something like that. So, but typical Trey here, you see a couple of them again, don't you? And I think Trey's been fantastic. He's proper old school, isn't he? In a modern team, really, as well. So now looking forward to seeing how he goes next season. But yeah, no, credit to Regis, the coaching staff out, and the lads as well. You can make changes. Sometimes they don't have an impact on the game, and you can say, well, the manager's made those changes, and it's down to the players then to go out there and to try and put the plan into action. Whereas at the weekend, listen, you get your bit of luck, obviously, with Kiefer Moore having the heavy loose touch and playing it behind their player and inviting the attack for Tommy. But then Tommy's delivered the goods, hasn't he? So, as I say there, Regis then gets a pat on the back. He's made the changes and they've had an impact on the game and the result.
I'm just thinking about the managers you played for. You played for Mick McCarthy, bit of a very strong personality. Wasn't afraid to fly off the handle if he needed to. Likewise, Roy Keane. But generally successful Sunderland managers have been like that. You think Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane were successful with Sunderland. Sam Allardyce had a period of success. Before them, Peter Reid, Dennis Smith. These were strong characters who really led with a bit of fear. And Régis Le Bris is very, very different, isn't he? Like, I almost worried when he came in that he maybe wasn't going to have the personality to manage a club like Sunderland, because when you think about a Sunderland manager, he doesn't fit the typical profile, but he's undoubtedly done a brilliant job. Like, what would you have made of a coach like that? Did you ever play for anybody who was like him?
Just on that, exactly that, Gav. I bumped into him the first time when we played South Shields, and was it Gateshead South Shields pre-season? I popped into the training ground that morning and I bumped into him coming out of his office, and Dodsey was there, so I just had a little 5-minute chat. Come across very quiet, and as you say, straight away I thought, not your typical type of Sunderland manager. Maybe Alex Neil I put in that category as well, where he wasn't afraid maybe of getting after people. Completely different to Roy and Mick, as you say, as well. And you do think, how's this going to go? Because you know what Sunderland's like as a club, or we do, and Regis coming into it is unknown from the fans' point of view, and vice versa. But there's different ways of going about it. Of course there is. And I actually, when we spoke to Luke after the game Saturday, I said, what's he like in the change rooms? Because we don't see that side of Regis. I said, does he a bit of a teacup thrower? Does he get after the boys? And he said, well, no, he leaves that to the players to try and sort. The likes of Luke, Chris Mepham, Alan Brown, the senior boys who've got this senior leadership group, as they call it these days, don't they? For us to try and manage it. Of course, he'll try and get some tactical mouse into the boys and maybe one or two tweaks if he needs to at half time. But in general, he said he doesn't fly off the handle. He leaves it to the boys. And yeah, if you're asking me, in terms of managers similar, really, I'd probably say Stuart Pearce at Nottingham Forest. He surprised me in a way, because you think of Stuart Pearce as, fist pumping, psycho.
His name was Psycho.
Exactly that. Nothing like that in the changing rooms. Quite a quiet character. Steve Wigley was his assistant. He left a lot of it to Steve. Even if we were losing games 1-0 half time, you think, he's going to come in and tee off at the boys, but he'd come in and be quite calm and placid and just went about it in a different way, really. So there's obviously various ways of how you go about getting your points across, but I didn't mind it either way, really. I could enjoy a good bollocking off the manager if he wanted to come in, and certainly Roy could do that at half time if needed. But on the flip side of that, if you've got a younger squad, sometimes you might lose the boys if the manager's coming in there with the old hairdryer treatment and he's getting after lads, and he might be a bit too much for me. So you've got to know your players as well and who you're managing and coaching.
Where does he rank now, Johnny, in your mind? Sunderland managers, now he's achieved something.
Well, I mean, he's got to be up there purely for the fact that he's achieved something. I mean, there's not too many Sunderland managers, certainly since I've been watching the club, can claim that. I think he'll get almost an artificial boost because of how we've done it, if you know what I mean. Like objectively, Roy Keane's had a better Sunderland career. Objectively, any manager who's kept us up in the Premier League have technically done better things than Le Bris, because still, as much as we've all loved it, at this moment in time, it is, inverted commas, only promotion. Next season's to be written. But just the way that he came in and he was so calm and collected about it, I thought was massively impressive from the start, because the club was becoming a bit of a basket case again last season with all the chaos with the managerial situation, and then there was lots of unrest with the fans, and there was 16th place finish. I mean, things weren't as united as they feel right now. I think it's fair to say. So for him to have come into that, off the back of a relegation last season as well. I mean, obviously extenuating circumstances in terms of the transfer situation at Lorient, but he's obviously come off the back of a massive personal disappointment and setback, and he's come into Sunderland and he's, to start the season with 9 wins out of 12, I think it was, and 4 or 5 clean sheets off the belt to start the season. He's moulded this very young team into a really impressive unit, and I think his fingerprints are all over every aspect of the way the team plays this season. I think you can see right from the organisation at the back all the way through to the way that we go about trying to score goals. And I think for me, the most impressive thing and the thing that boosts him above a lot of other managers I've watched since I've been supporting Sunderland is he's almost developed along with the squad, because I think the start of the season, my biggest criticism of him was inflexibility and lack of willingness to use subs to change games. Well, look at Wembley. I mean, he started with one formation, switched to another. He started making subs before the 60th minute. I think they were some of the bravest substitutions I've ever seen from a manager in a game of that magnitude. That to take your captain off. Now, yes, look, Daniel wasn't having his best game, but understandably so given the circumstances. But even with that in mind, to take your captain off, go to a 4-4-2, move your most expensive player out of the position you started him in, all of that coming together to then result in getting the goals, I thought was, like I say, incredibly brave and courageous from Le Bris. I think he deserves immense credit for that. And just generally for the way that he's gone about his business this season, because I agree with you both. I think generally strong characters are kind of the best Sunderland managers. And I mean, Roy Keane was the manager of the first season I had a season ticket. So that was my kind of Sunderland grounding was Roy Keane. But I think the way Le Bris has done it, yeah, he deserves huge credit. He's gone against the grain a little bit, and he's had to stick to his guns at times this season in the face of some, be it criticism or be it just doubt from people who weren't sure that his way was maybe the right way. And he's held his own through it, and he's come out on the other end absolutely smelling of roses. And he deserves to enjoy every second of it. Now, I'm sure he'll be understated in the celebrations as well. I'm sure he was, he wasn't exactly jumping about and necking pints of Guinness like Trey Hume. But
that's it. I mean, Mike on the pod we did the other day was at the party after the final, because I don't know how he got himself in there, but he said, while the party's going on over there, he just was in the corner with his family, eating cheese and biscuits and drinking red wine. He was quite, I just, even when you watch when they're chucking champagne all over the place, he tried to keep out the way, didn't he? I think he's just, I think he's quite happy not being in the limelight, which for me makes him even more impressive, Danny. I think, I'm not to knock Chris Wilder too much, but you couldn't get two more opposite people, could you? There's one guy who loves being in the limelight, loves the controversy and the sound bites in the media, and then there's the other guy who just wants to get on with his job and just, he's very focused, isn't he?
Yeah. I think, as you say, Gav, excuse me, he's happy to let the lads have the limelight and stay in the background and just do his stuff at the training ground. I think, as you say there, Luke mentioned as well at the weekend that sometimes he perhaps go to the training ground for a little dip in the pool, just keep himself ticking over at 7 o'clock at night, and then Régis and the coaching staff are still there in the office looking at tactics, looking at one or two different things, and he probably lives and breathes football. One of those types of managers who can't switch off from it, who's always looking at the next game ahead. That one's done. Let's focus on the next one. But as you say, there's all different types of characters, and you just mentioned there, well, where does he rank at this moment in time? Well, he's obviously still writing his chapter, isn't he, in his Sunderland history himself. So hopefully, as you say, this season's been fantastic, and he'll be building, I'm sure, now with his staff and the recruitment team, and looking ahead to what we've got to build for next season. And he'll be looking forward to the challenge. I think, players obviously look to pit their wits against the best players in the world. Well, he's going to be coming up against some of the best managers in the world as well. So that'll be a good, interesting challenge for himself as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that myself. But yeah, we'll save the previewing of next season for a month or so. I think we'll keep basking in this. Just before we kind of round off, I was interested your weekend in London. How did that go? Like when did you turn up? Where did you head? Were you at Trafalgar and all that?
So yeah, Friday morning got the train down from Durham, 7:30, 8:00. So obviously all the Sunderland fans on the train as well.
I was in Durham about that time, so I must have just missed
right,
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, get down into the capital. We went down, obviously myself and Frankie and about 5 or 6 of the media members of the media team. So they had obviously the white shirt, which you see on all the clips on the coat hanger. It was at different locations, the stickers and, till the end logos at King's Cross and everything. So they still have work to do. Then we got a few hours off. And then Friday evening, there was a bit of a do on for some ex-players like Jimmy Montgomery was there, Marco, Quinney. We had to sort of do a little bit there with Frankie, just a bit of a social one. Not quite. We were staying pretty much 50 yards from Trafalgar Square, right on a hotel on Trafalgar. So sort of walked around it, had a quiet pint, and then got to bed. And then, what I was thinking, and then we got onto Wembley Way. We had to be in for 10 o'clock to get in to get all through security and everything. So we were there 9:30, 10:15. And the first Sheffield United shirt I've seen all weekend was on Wembley Way, walking down to the ground, which I was like, Christ, there's the first shirt we've seen of Sheffield United. And then that was that. So obviously the game, full comms, pre-match, post-match, and then went to do what you just mentioned there on the Saturday night. Obviously Kirill had sorted out a party for the players and obviously the staff and all the stadium staff, the groundsmen, everything along those lines as well. So that was a decent nice venue. And as you say, 1 or 2 of the boys had a few drinks and let their hair down. Why not? They've earned it and enjoyed it. So and that was that. Got the afternoon train back on the Sunday, so I had a few hours in bed, and then we were back up, and it was carnage on the tubes, as you said. So the songs were out, and it was a good experience.
Yeah, it was funny. Just the day after when I got back to King's Cross, and we seen the team bus outside the hotel where all the players were staying. They were all stotting still. They were all still. I don't think many of them had much sleep. But like you see, you don't get many of them moments, do you, as a player, where you can let your hair down justifiably without being judged too much for it. We were in the same pub as Anthony Patterson and Simon Moore on the afternoon. They chose not to get on the bus and they stayed out. But I said to my dad, when do you ever see this anymore? Like players mixing with the fans, but they deserve it, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. And obviously, as you say, social media is bigger than when I was playing and I was in it both. And everything's there for people to see, not just the clubs. Obviously, you've got the media out there, and every social network platform going, but fans are out there as well. And as you say, lads, they want to enjoy it. The fans pay their money throughout the course of the season, travelling the length of the breadth of the country, following the boys, supporting them. So why not allow them to enjoy it and bask in the glory of what it is at this moment in time? And everybody's earned it, not just the staff. Every member of the training ground, there's everybody you go through there who've all contributed throughout the course of the season and over the last 8 seasons for us to get back to the top flight and back to the Premier League, really. So everybody's been a part of it. So yeah, let's enjoy it while it lasts, and then over the next couple of weeks, I'm sure the lads will have a bit of downtime before they get the trainers on, put the hard yards in, and they're building then for what is going to be a tough Premier League experience for us, but hopefully one that we can enjoy.
Yeah, so what's next for you and Frankie then? Obviously, I think things change a little bit now, don't they, with the coverage of the club? If we're in the Premier League, all the sort of broadcasting around the games and things completely changes. So do you know what the future holds for you as a team?
Yeah, not sure. We actually just had a quick chat with Oscar, who's obviously head of the media department at this moment in time, and he said, well, we'll get in the next week or two. We'll have a discussion, see what's the plans moving forward, whether the SAFC Live is allowed to continue. I'm not sure. Obviously, a lot of Premier League clubs have their own channels anyway, don't they? So we'll have to wait and see. I know we've obviously got a big following abroad, the States generally, and Ireland. There's Scandinavia, see them on the International Fans Day coming over. So there's a big following there who obviously tune into the show and the programme for the game. But we'll have to wait and see what happens moving forward. But listen, I've had 5 years at it now. Obviously from the dark days in League One, I think Charlton on the way was our first game, what we covered. So it's been a pleasure really to obviously develop ourselves and to see the lads getting over the line and getting back into the top flight, as we say. So yeah, I've enjoyed it. So we'll have to see what the next chapter is.
Yeah, what's the day-to-day look like for you now then? If that's your fun job on a weekend, watching the games and stuff, but what's the day-to-day like?
Yeah, so again, going back a couple of years, I done my A licence 2023 through the Welsh FA, but you have to obviously be in coaching as well. So I was in with our 18s a couple of seasons ago. So you have to film your sessions, record it, send it off to get assessed and marked off. And then last season, I was in with the 15s, 16s as well, nighttime doing sessions with them as well, really. So I've enjoyed that. I wasn't in this season. I've moved places, so I've had a full renovation, so it's been tough to get in. But I'll wait up next season and have a chat with the staff at the training ground. Maybe look to get back in coaching, get the boots back on, and try and pass on a bit of my knowledge to some of these younger boys. And I've worked with, I've said that, like to Chris Rigg and Tommy Watson over the last few years. So it's been good to see them developing and to become first team. A big part of the first team this season and what they've achieved as well. So that was a big core of the boys there, an opportunity for these lads now at 16, 18, and seeing the lads, was a pathway for me to get an opportunity into the first team at Sunderland. So that's what it's shown them, and to be a part of that moving forward would be good.
There is some really good players coming through now, though. Even below Watson, Rigg, that sort of age. Yeah. There's some unbelievable players coming through. I mean, you see the under 21s towards the end of the season. Half of them are 16-year-old, and we're winning games. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible the production line of talent out of this academy, isn't it? It must be a privilege to work with them.
Yeah, it is, and getting the opportunities, as I say there, where you mentioned there's Finn Geragushin coming through, big lad at the top end of the pitch. He's coming on well. You go back 2 years ago, as I say, when I was with the 18s with Adam Asgard, who moved on to Southampton, but they finished second that year behind Man City, 10 points ahead of Man United in third. Do you know what I mean? So you're coming up against the calibre of some of these boys who will be on big money at that age in some of those academies, So to get the local lads in and to try and develop them, as you say, with Jordan, Finn Lynch, there's some good quality coaches at the academy as well. And it'll be a pleasure for those boys. And obviously Carlton, who you give a mention to, who's seen it throughout the years.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sadly no longer with us. Fantastic guy around the place. So, for some of these coaches to see some of the rewards really from the work they put in with these boys, Dan Neil, Pato, lads we're forgetting there who we're not mentioning, who are a big part of achieving what we've achieved this season. So long may it continue, because it's easy now, isn't it? You see, our friends down the road who've got amount of money behind them to get talent in, and maybe some of the young boys think, I'm not going to get the opportunity there because they're just going to splash loads of cash and bring players in. So maybe, unless you're exceptional, you're not going to get an opportunity in the first team. Whereas I think if you look at Sunderland, where we're recruiting younger lads, yes, we've got some young foreign boys in, but at the same time, we've got that blend, haven't we? Giving lads who've been here since 7, 8 years of age the opportunity to get into the first team squad as well. Harrison Jones as well, in and around it this season. So big future ahead for some of these boys, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, you look at the team at the weekend. Chris Rigg, the youngest ever starter in a championship playoff final. You had man the match was Anthony Patterson from the academy. Captain Dan Neil, the lad who lifted the trophy, and then the goal scorer at the end, Tommy Watson. There's no bigger feather in the cap really for the academy, is it? I'm glad you brought that up about Newcastle, really, because I do think that's where we can really, when you in the face of them basically buying the way at the top, which is inevitable. Sunderland can make gains, I think, certainly locally. When you look at local talent, we are the club of the young players, of the young fans. You can get a ticket for a Sunderland game as a young fan. You're not going to have to pay through the nose to get it. But as a young player, if you come into our academy, you're looking at the first team, and there's lads not that much older than you, really. Chris Rigg's debut was when he was 15-year-old, and he played against Fulham in the FA Cup. And there would have been lads his age at the academy going, bloody hell, there's a lad my age playing for the first team. I think we've got to sing more about that.
Yeah, it is as well, because you're looking at 18, 19, it's not young in football anymore, is it?
No,
really?
No.
Still saying if you're good enough, you're old enough, aren't you? And you're right there, some lads will be 19, 20, they're still young lads, but then Chris Rigg's got 50 plus games under his belt now in a Sunderland shirt, and obviously Job and Mayenda, these lads are still sort of teenagers really in and around it. So yeah, you mentioned Newcastle, obviously the likes of Lewis Miley, and if there's a good talent there, they might get the opportunity. But in general, as you say, if you're looking at ourselves, I think there is a pathway there where you are likely to get an opportunity if you're good enough, and age becomes sort of second best really in terms of that. So yeah, recruitment is obviously key, and then moving forward, of course, you want your young lads to get an opportunity next season, but we are going to go and get a little bit of experience to help the young boys in the big boys league as well.
Yeah, that's what we need, isn't it?
Can I just ask one quick question on that, actually? So obviously, like Danny, you've played in the Premier League for Sunderland. and you've played in teams that stayed up. How much importance do you put on specifically having Premier League experience in the dressing room versus just having experience of sort of top level, maybe European football, maybe the French league, maybe the German league, that kind of thing? Do you think it makes a difference having specifically people who've played in the Premier League and know this league specifically?
Yeah, good question, John. I think it helps, certainly. I've played with lads who have come in, and I think they may, if they played in France or maybe Germany or where else, they say, the pace of the game, it's a little bit quicker, isn't it? Sometimes you think you've got a little bit more time to receive on the half time. All of a sudden, bang, challenge comes in and it can be a little bit frantic. At the same time, it's a strange one because, I've played throughout the leagues where if you're playing League Two as a centre back, you head 30, 40 balls every weekend. It's, there's a lot of physical, similar to like what we've seen at the weekend with balls going up to keep them all, but that's their strength and play to it. Whereas in the Premier League, you come up against a lot of the top sides, you probably head 4 or 5 balls, on a Saturday afternoon, and mainly from corners. It's all short and sharp in and around your feet. So, it's going to be a learning experience for a lot of the boys next season. But as you say, I think if you can get lads in, and I've wrote it down here, I'm looking at what I would look where we need next season. I've probably got 9 or 10 bodies in where we need to help out and to strengthen next season. And I put next to a few of them Premier League experience, Premier League, top end of the pitch for me is the door on my end there. I think they're going to develop and be good at the top level over the next few years. But if we can go and get a striker, that you're going to have to pay a few quid to go and get one, they don't come cheap, or somebody who's maybe in and around a top club who's maybe not getting an opportunity at this moment in time. So recruitment's going to be key next season, and the likes of Stuart Harvey and obviously Christian, I'm sure they're in the offices now working hard. They'll have names up on the whiteboard there in their offices. I'm thinking that's what we need to get in. But it's difficult because you see where, a lot of sides go abroad pre-season and then they're not willing to let some lads go until they know themselves, that they sort the squads out when they come back from tours of the States or Asia, wherever they go. And then after that, but for me, I'd want to try and build our squad early on if we can next season, not leave it till the end of August where you're getting bodies in. You want to get the bodies in and then start working with Régis and his formations and his patterns of play and what he wants to get into the boys moving forward next season.
What about Jordan Henderson? And there's a name we've been linked with. Someone, I think your paths will have crossed at Sunderland towards the end of your time. Yeah. What do you think about him?
He come into it. Yeah, so he's 34, Jordan. What I will say, people will look at that. Do we need? But he was a fit lad, obviously back in the day. Yes, he was 19, 20 when he was coming into the first team set up with myself. But I think he looks after himself really well. And if in the role what he plays, that's sitting in front of the back four. If you're looking at, obviously, you've got Dan Neil in there. And again, that's what I've wrote down there, experience in that role, because it's a vital role in the Premier League where, you're going to have less of the ball naturally going up as a promoted side, you'd expect. So if we are looking to try and play out and, he's got his back to goal and he's looking at those little triangles, and Jordan's been there and done it, hasn't he, now, the top flights with Liverpool, winning the league and winning the Champions League, and bags of experience to pass on to the likes of Dan Neil in those positions and whoever else comes into the squad. So, yeah, I could see that one happening, Gav, to be honest. And I think probably something, I think Quinny spoke about it on TalkSport, didn't he, the other day as well. So if it's in the pipeline, if he feels his time's up at Ajax, then maybe Jordan thinks, do you know what, bit of a homecoming for me and joining the lads back in the top flight. Why not?
It's interesting though, isn't it, when you think about the recruitment strategy for next season? Because I think pretty much everybody's been full of praise for the way the club have recruited in recent years, and we've signed some really good players for next to nothing. But now all of a sudden, Christian Speakman, Stuart Harvey, they've got this Premier League budget to play with. And that, you do just wonder how that changes the dynamic, because you've obviously, when stepping up, you can't pay players what we were paying them in the Championship. We're going to have to pay Premier League wages for players. But it then opens the door up to a completely other calibre of footballer, doesn't it? And at the same time, as a team who are going to be fighting to stay up next season, there's no doubt about it, you sort of have to abandon your regular strategy to a degree of only signing players you can develop. Like, we have to now sign players who are ready to play Premier League football. That's an interesting quirk of what's to come, isn't it? Like how our recruitment team have never been in this position before, all of a sudden have to adjust. And I imagine at the same time, though, they're licking their lips. They'll be absolutely delighted to be able to go out there and spend some proper money on proper players. But it is interesting that sort of change in strategy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you look at Ipswich last season, obviously going up, I think they spent around 107 million. they brought 10 or so players in. Forest as well, similar when they went up in 2023, wasn't it? I think brought a load of players in, big turnover of players. Just about stayed up that year, didn't they? And look where they've ended up this season. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think you want to sort of stay with your beliefs really in your recruitment as best as you can, but you've got to be a little bit flexible and thinking, well, come on now, as I said there, you're in the big boys league again. And if you're going to go and get a quality player, you're looking north of 20, 30 million straight away, aren't you? So it's maybe how do they sort of divide the budget and what they're looking at spending? Do you go and spend 30 or 40 million on 2 or 3 quality players? And then you're looking at maybe a little unknown, Mayenda is your prime example, go and get a foreigner that nobody has yet sort of got on their radar. Can we go and get 1 or 2 gems that aren't, people are looking at really? So there's probably a few categories where you have to look at it for me really. And, you still try and keep your homegrown talent involved in it, but then you've got to have quality. And as you say, some additions. And for me, it's key with lads who've got a little bit of experience and if they can at Premier League level as well.
We can't lose that togetherness, though, Johnny, can we? That got us to the Premier League. That's another big thing. It's almost, you talk about signing 9 or 10 players, but then is that going to upset the balance that we got? The spirit which took us to the Premier League, that core group of players who've really been together, as you mentioned earlier, from League One, it's tough, isn't it? It's a tough balance to strike that we might have to we're going to have to upset some people, really. There's going to be some players in a week or two, maybe a bit longer, who are going to possibly find out that they're not needed next season, and that's that's something else to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and that's going to be a problem that's going to span from the recruitment team through the coaching staff, obviously, and the lads in the dressing room. It's the recruitment team will kind of be the arbiters in the end of who comes and who stays to a degree, but then that'll filter through to obviously Régis and his staff will have to be dealing with the fallout, like you say. It is going to be difficult. Like Danny said as well, it's going to be a real balancing act between, getting that injection of quality that you need, or maybe a bit more than an injection, to get up and stay in the Premier League the way, it's so competitive these days. I mean, you look at 16th and 17th, getting to the Europa League final, and it's like, oh, our total squad spend is about 18 million. Go and compete with that, lads. Good luck. So, it's going to, by default, it's going to mean upsetting people. It just is. It's a fact of life. It's a fact of football. When you're on a trajectory with a group, then inevitably some fall behind a little bit, some go ahead, and that's where we see the likes of Jack Clark, who obviously left last summer. His personal trajectory was just a little bit ahead of Sunderland, so he moved on, and we picked up the pieces. And I'm sure it'll be the same then when it happens in the other direction, and we do end up having to part company with some of these lads. But I think the most important thing is trusting the recruitment team to keep getting it right, because they're the ones who've identified these characters in the first place and brought them in. They haven't brought in a load of, I'm sure some of the lads they've brought in haven't really gelled or fitted in, but they haven't brought in a load of chances. They've not brought in players who've decided to go AWOL and not play and get the contracts cancelled, and some of the ridiculous situations we had towards the end of the Premier League days. So, I'd have confidence in them to make sure they're finding the right characters to come in, this summer and beyond anyway. I'm sure they're going to be doing their due diligence. Easy for me to say. I'm sure they're going to be, covering every angle. And then it's also, a massive amount of the responsibility, I'm sure, will fall on the players who were already there in that dressing room. The likes of Luke O'Nien, Dan Neil, Chris Mepham, if he's still around. We don't know if he'll stay beyond the summer. Alan Brown, those names that you were mentioning before as well, Danny, they'll be, I'm sure, critical in ensuring that harmony remains there, because I was listening to Thierry Henry on the Overlap the other day, and he was saying, when he went into Arsenal, he had the likes of, your Tony Adams and Martin Keown and people like that. They were the ones setting the standards. Luke O'Nien's got to be that for Sunderland now, doesn't he? He's got to be a player like that, where the new lads come in and they think, I want to get on his good side. And as long as we maintain that sort of dynamic in the changing room, I'm sure we won't go too far wrong.
Yeah. As you say, in terms of that as well, you're not going to get every signing right either. You look what's coming over the last few years. We've made some great signings, but with some lads it just hasn't happened. It happens at Man United. You look at Anthony, and there's other players. Jadon Sancho, it costs millions, doesn't always work out. That's football. But if you can get 1 or 2 right, obviously it's going to be key. But looking ahead to next season as well, and you mentioned it there, Johnny, where who finished 16th and 17th, well, Man United and Spurs. You can't expect them to have as bad a seasons as they've had. Obviously, the 3 promoted teams came back down, so you're looking at it and think, well, where's there going to be a weakness next season? You've got Everton down there, you'd expect them going into their new stadium to kick on a little bit more. Wolves, so it's going to be tough because you look at your Brentfords, your Bournemouths, Brightons, all these sides who have become sort of stable, mid-table quality Premier League teams now, haven't they? So it's going to be without putting a downer on it, because I know we just been promoted, but it's going to be a tough old slog next season.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got to get some quality in there straight away. And even bringing these lads in, whoever comes in, they think, more likely than not, it's going to be a tough season. So they're going to have to stand up and help. As you mentioned, Luke and a lot of these other boys haven't got any experience of playing in the top flight. I think is there only Chris Mepham in the squad off the top of my head who's played in the Premier League so far for us. And as you say, that's if he signs for us on a permanent as well. So there's very little Premier League experience in there. Jordan does come in and he's bringing bags of that in there as well. So it's going to be interesting in terms of that recruitment side of things, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the summer we had when you got promoted with Roy Keane, and we signed 12 players that summer. And not an awful lot of Premier League experience, actually, looking at it. We signed Greg Halford, Russell Anderson, Michael Chopra. Don't think that any of them had Premier League experience. Kieran Richardson came in from Man U, but he was a young boy, wasn't he? Dixon Atuhu from Norwich, a Championship player. Paul McShane from West Brom, a Championship player. Craig Gordon from the SPL. Roy O'Donovan came over from Cork. Andy Cole, who by that point was about as experienced as it gets, to be fair. Ian Hart, Danny Higginbottom from the Championship, Kevin Jones. So that season we didn't sign a lot of Premier League experience, but we spent a lot of money.
That team already had more Premier League experience,
absolutely.
To be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. but what was interesting to me was just the sheer amount of players we brought in. I mean, we signed 12, and I'm looking at the out list. Kenny Cunningham, Tommy Miller, William Mockwet, Kevin Smith, Stephen Elliott, Tobias Hyson, Stern John. They're the players who left that summer. So, well, just interesting to reflect back on that period, actually, because when you were at the club at that time, an awful lot of players came in. So not, the boys who got you to the top flight, all of a sudden they're being replaced. Like, did that? How did that sort of affect the balance in the changing room?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, as you say, because the lads have got you there, so you think, no, are they going to get rewarded, being given an opportunity in the Premier League now? But, it's a tough old world, isn't it, the football world? And these chats will happen. They'll happen the next few weeks for some of these lads where, in a nice way, how do you go about it? Well, have a word with your agent, but your game time might be limited next season if you want to look at getting away, and then obviously you give them the heads up then that they're not maybe going to be part of the plans moving forward. And on the flip side of that as well, if you're bringing 10, 12 new bodies in and all of a sudden you go back in for pre-season and you've been there for, Luke O'Nine's looking around and he's thinking, oh, I feel like a new boy in here now because it's just new faces all around me, so it's trying to get that balance really, isn't it? And the blend between keeping the core of the lads who have done well and who you think can they make the step up to the Premier League for us. And, you're sat there myself and we'll all have a look at it and you can debate it who you think's going to, step up next season. The likes of Dennis Serkin, Trey Hume, opportunity that they feel have earned to have a crack at the top flight, really. Dan Ballard, these other lads as well. So, yeah, you want to see them given their wings, so to speak, the top flight with Sunderland. But then these other lads are going to come in and you may get one or two and who have got 5-6 seasons under their belt at the top flight. And then on the training grounds where they're learning the experience from them then, and, what's it like playing in the top flight? What's the difference? Do you notice? Well, it's the pace of the game, really. It's the sharpness in the final third, all these little details that come into play.
Yeah, that's as much as I've talked about next season, this last 10, 15 minutes. I'm still trying not to think about it too much, but no, I think we might have to grab you back in a month or so, Danny, and we might go into this in a bit more depth. Hopefully by that point we'll have a couple of signings through the door and we'll have some more
transfer talk.
Yeah, transfer talk. But no, it's been great. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time, mate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. Pleasure. Enjoyed it.
And thanks, Jonny, once again, mate. Hope your voice recovers a bit more by the time you next appear on this pod.
Well, it's a good job I'm not on any podcast for the significant future because I'm going to need to recover. Like, I'll have to actually do my day job.
It's like that that scene in Toy Story where because we're now in the Premier Legue, the Championship podcast.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
Don't want to play with you anymore. Now something's thrown you in the bin. You're not needed anymore, mate.
Aye, that's it. I'm finished. But I know, and cheers for coming on as well, Danny. That was brilliant. And I know you only scored 3 goals. It should have been 4. That one against Villa in the Premier League at the Stadium of Light, that should never have been chalked off.
Never forgive Steve Bennett, mate, for that either. No, as you said, last minute winner, chalked off.
I was furious.
Could have done with that VAR, Danny. Could have done with that VAR from the weekend. Thanks to listeners. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got loads on the feeds this week. If you haven't already caught up with How We're the Podcast, we've had a pod out every single day since, well, forever, it seems like. So if you haven't caught up, you make sure that you grab us on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We had Nick Barnes on yesterday. We had RGX Media. Ross Johnson joined us the day before. We had a pod where it was me and Bomber and Mike on, just chatting about our weekend in London. There was a few tears shed with that one. There's the On This Week pod from Monday, which the lads do every single Monday now, which is a delve back into the history books for Sunderland. Clive Tildesley joined us on Sunday, so there's that one to catch up on if you haven't caught it. And there's also the reaction pod, which Chris and Martin did immediately after the final whistle. So there's loads and loads and loads to get caught up on. We're going to keep going every single day through the summer with whatever we can talk about. We just love Sunderland, so you can't get rid of us. We'll keep you going on your commutes and your dog walks and all the rest of it. So thank you very much for joining us.
Just on the one with Clive Tilsley as well, Gav, I listened to that the other day and I was disgusted that he thought Trey Hume's challenge was a foul. Couldn't believe it, what I was listening to. Getting sucked in his old age.
Yeah, we'll bring that up next time he's on. We'll pull him up on that. Make him watch it from various angles. But yeah, thanks listeners. Thanks for joining us. Like I say, get caught up on everything. As Danny said, you can listen to Clive and disagree with Clive Tilsley if you want to. Just let us know what you think of what he had to say about that tackle from Trey Hume. And like I say, we'll be back with another one over the weekend. We'll catch you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.